Was it worth getting up at 4 AM in the UK to watch the season opening Australian Grand Prix? Absolutely. It really, really was. It seemed for all the world as though it was going to be a relatively mundane finish to this race. One team was very much dominating, everybody else was very much chasing. But, oh my word, did the weather absolutely throw many spanners in many works to absolutely shake up the order at Melbourne this afternoon, or this morning in this part of the world here in Europe. So, as always, guys, as I always do for all the major sessions in F1, let's have a look. The 5 things that we learned from the 2025 Australian Grand Prix. So, the first thing that we learned is that it was very much a bad day for the rookies. On the whole, there was one very notable exception to that I will very much mention in this first thing. But yeah, on the whole, the rookies, the inexperienced drivers did struggle around Melbourne, Albert Park. It was a really struggle for them because it started out in intermediate conditions, did this race. It dried up around the midway point, but then of course the rain did reappear later on and catch quite a few people out. Isaac Hadjar didn't even start the race. He crashed out in the first corner while trying to warm up his tyres. We got an aborted start because of that. Hadjar, bless him, honestly, I felt for him. He was crying. He was so upset. We all know what the pressure is in the Red Bull kind of environment, so I do feel for him there. He probably is thinking the worst. But something that was very nice that I did see after that is that while they were lining up for the second start after the aborted start, Anthony Hamilton, Lewis Hamilton's father, now of course if you don't know, Isaac is a massive Lewis Hamilton fan. If you've seen the rookie conversation, the roundtable thing that they put on earlier this week, you'll know that. And yeah, to see Anthony Hamilton come over to Isaac and just, you know, put an arm around his shoulder, just say, I don't know what he was saying, we couldn't hear what he was saying, but I imagine he was saying something along the lines of, look kid, it happens, you know, don't worry about it, the season's long, you'll get your time to shine. So that was really, really sweet to see, and I'll be surprised if Sir Lewis after this race doesn't do something as well. I am recording this literally after the race has concluded. They've not even gotten to the podium ceremony yet. I'm just looking at Lando Norris in the corner of my eye celebrating with his McLaren team. We'll go into why very shortly, but yeah, so he spun out when the race intensified. Jack Doohan, he also spun out and crashed the car too pretty early on. I think it was only like the first couple of laps, something like that. On top of that, Liam Lawson, he spun out as well. I think he was on dry tyres on a wet track at that point, around halfway through the race. And of course, Fernando Alonso, everybody's favourite rookie too, he spun out about halfway through the race as well. I jest, of course. I understand that joke at Laura Winter, the F1 presenter. But yeah, a very notable exception to that is Kimi Antonelli, who, despite qualifying, what was he, P16? He was out in Q1 yesterday, had an awful day in qualifying. He kept his nose clean. He did an absolutely incredible job. He finished P4 on the road. He was down to P5 because of a 5-second penalty due to an unsafe release that was applied right at the end of the race. So he slipped behind Alex Albon. Alex Albon up in 4th, by the way. What a race he's at. Unbelievable stuff. Finished behind his teammate George Russell. A really good day for Mercedes on the whole. But yeah, this is probably the longest point one I've ever done, to be honest. But yeah, bad for the rookies on the whole, but the main exception to that was Kimi Antonelli. The only rookie I haven't mentioned, Ollie Behrman, back down at the back of the field in 14th place. Unfortunately, Haas at the moment, and I'll probably do a video on this at some point this week, kind of look like black markers. They look slower than the Sauber today. Both of them, Ocon and Behrman, really, really struggling. But yeah, so I did mention the winner there. I did kind of give it away. Second thing we learned, McLaren very much the team to beat. Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris absolutely led this race as a canter for the most part. And Max Verstappen was keeping it, you know, kind of making things awkward for the two of them early on in the race. Verstappen getting ahead of Oscar Piastri at the start, chilling in P2 for a while, but the pressure eventually got to him, made a mistake, let Piastri go through, and by the time the safety car, by the time that Alonso crashed and that safety car came out, I think there was a 14-second gap between the McLarens and Max Verstappen, so McLaren looking really ominously quick, although Lando Norris was put under severe pressure in the closing stages by Max Verstappen. I feel like a little bit of conservatism coming into Norris's driving in the latter stages there. On the whole, in dry conditions in particular, sorry, in intermediate conditions I should say, McLaren looked like a team to beat, and even in dry conditions looked pretty good as well, so I think they're going to take a lot of beating on McLaren. But yeah, where was Oscar Piastri? You know, Verstappen was in P2, George Russell was P3. You've mentioned the whole top 5, George. Where was Oscar Piastri? He was down in P9. So when the rain came and cars started to go off the track, both McLarens went off the track. Norris actually managed to recover really well in the last sector and did maintain his lead, but Piastri, unfortunately, from P2, spun out and couldn't really recover. He did eventually get back, but it took a lap to do it. It was really horrible. It was great to hear the Aussie G'ing him up and everything like that, but unfortunately, yeah, I mean, he had a good recovery in the end to get some points in P9, overtaking the likes of Pierre Gasly and Sir Lewis Hamilton, and we'll talk about Ferrari very quickly in a bit, but yeah, not a good day for Joe on the whole. You know, he did well to recover and get some points for it at least, but on the whole, the Aussie curse in the Australian Grand Prix, it continues. No Australian driver has ever scored a top 3 in the home race in the Formula 1 era. Still, I thought this year would have finally broken that duck. No, the curse continues. But yeah, it was very much a race of two halves, like I just said a little bit ago. I mean, basically the first half was in intermediate conditions. They were thinking about going to dry tyres, but Alonso spinning and the safety car coming out did, of course, mean that, you know, everybody came in for dry tyres. But then a short, sharp shower. That very much changed the order up. Drivers came in to pit for intermediates, and you know, that was very much a race of two halves because of that. It was such a thrilling race in Melbourne today, and I really, honestly, even as a diehard McLaren fan, I was thinking to myself, oh, this is going to be a bit boring, isn't it now? Because McLaren are just miles clear of everybody. The crash from Alonso and then the rain shower absolutely shook things up. I mean, the order was absolute chaos. Lance Stroll in an Aston Martin that didn't look very good this weekend at all. Not backmarkers by any means, but not a challenger for points, or good points anyway. He was P6. Nico Hülkenberg in P7 in the Sauber. I mean, the Ferraris as well. The Ferraris, we'll talk about the Ferraris for the final thing. The gamble didn't pay off for them, unfortunately. They weren't looking particularly great. They qualified on the 4th row, 7th and 8th, behind the Racing Bull of Yuki Tsunoda and behind the Williams of Alex Albon. Albon having a fantastic race this weekend, don't get me wrong, but you know, you'd expect the Ferraris to be faster than the Williams, but not really looking at this. But yeah, incredible stuff for them to be so far down. They did do a gamble though, like I said. Leclerc was, I think it was like P5, something like that, before the rain came. Hamilton was struggling to get past Albon. He basically spent the entire first half of the race behind Alex Albon. Of course, those two having a lot of previous as well. You know, from back in the Red Bull days for Alex Albon and back in the Mercedes days for Lewis Hamilton, you know, where they had a few crashes, and you know, Alex Albon very much will take the stance that Hamilton pushed him off and crashed him out and potentially cost him his Red Bull career. If you really want to go that deep with it. And you know, there's definitely a case to be made for that. So Albon was never going to make it easy for Hamilton to get past. He couldn't do it. That K1 setting or whatever, that overtake mode on his steering wheel, Hamilton never got even close enough to use it. But when the rain came and everybody pit for intermediate tyres, a few guys stayed out. Tsunoda stayed out, and also the two Ferrari drivers, Leclerc and Hamilton, stayed out too. And Hamilton briefly led the race as well because of that. But unfortunately, the safety car came out, and you think they might have gambled and stayed out, try to stay on the dry tyres, but they obviously thought that it was too wet to even do that under safety car conditions, and they had to pit, and because of that, they went effectively to the back of the field, and you know, they went behind everybody except for the Haas and Tsunoda, who also pit for the same reason too. So a gamble that didn't pay off in wet conditions for Ferrari. I understand why they did it, but you have to say it cost them today. If it wasn't for that, if they pit when everybody else pit, they probably would have ended up 4th and 5th, to be honest. So yeah, a lack of pace in that Ferrari, and not quite embarrassing Ferrari strategy, I would say, not on the level of a few years ago at least, but when it's wet conditions, we saw this in Silverstone and Canada last year, they seem to make the wrong decision consistently, and you have to say they made the wrong decision here. You can't say they did the right thing keeping the guys out, because they clearly, it cost them a lot of time and position. So yeah, there we go, guys. My 5-minute review being almost 10 minutes long because it was that eventful of a race. I was genuinely struggling with things to talk about until Alonso's crash, and everything just shook up. Do watch the highlights of this race if you get the chance. I really do appreciate it. It absolutely 1000% was worth it at 4 AM for. After I've edited my video, I'm going to do another one on Kimi Antonelli as well. It'll be out shortly after this too, so stay tuned for that here on F1 Chronicle. But yeah, when I've done that, I'm going to go back to bed because I'm really tired. But I'm sorry if this is a bit rambly because of that, but I've been up since 3:45 this morning, so I am rather a bit exhausted, to say the least. Even though I got an early night last night, it's never early enough to get up at time in the morning. But what did you think about the Australian Grand Prix, guys? An early contender for race of the season. Definitely the best race of this season so far, without a doubt, in the top one. But yeah, we'll be back here for more news and everything in the meantime here on F1 Chronicle. You know how it is. ideas. We've got China coming up next weekend. Chinese Grand Prix from the Shanghai International Circuit. If this is anything to go by, it's going to be a stunner. I'm really looking forward to it. Like, share, comment, subscribe to see much more content like this on the world of Formula 1. Hope you've had a fantastic Sunday. If you've not watched the race yet, go and watch it. Watch the highlights, watch the replay, watch whatever's available in your country or territory. And yeah, see you soon, guys. Have a great weekend.